welcome to episode 229 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Lydia Creech,
Ashley Baker,
Nathan Smith.
And in today's episode, we will be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we will begin our Jackie Chan series with 1984's Wheels on Meals. But before that, let's go ahead and jump into movies that we saw this week. And Lydia, you caught one of the many new Netflix releases. It's kind of difficult to keep up with all the stuff that they're pooping out over there. But one of them has Jennifer Aniston and Dolly Parton songs, so that can't be too bad.
Yeah, I meant to try to catch this before the end of 2018, but that just wasn't gonna happen. But it's a new film by Anne Fletcher called Dumplin, and you already mentioned it stars Jennifer Aniston, and it's about Jennifer Aniston's daughter. Her name is Willa Dean, nicknamed Dumplin, and she's a fat girl, and her mom her mom's big thing was she won Miss 1991 teen bluebonnet pageant or whatever, and she keeps running the pageant. And then you have her daughter who doesn't fit conventional beauty standards, could not be less interested in doing pageant things. But she gets mad at her mom after her aunt dies and goes on to enter the pageant, I think in the beginning to try to embarrass her mom. But it's kind of a much sweeter story than that. I don't know, I thought it was really sweet. Apparently it's based on a book, and I saw over the holidays, a lot of people on Twitter talking about it, and they were very excited. Because it's not a movie that makes fun of Willa Dean. She enters it with a couple of her friends too, kind of misfits in this smallish Texas town. And I don't know, they learn something. And also they get pageant help from a bunch of drag queens who do Dolly Parton shows, drags. And it was kind of nice. It seems
it's seriously Netflix seems to be popping stuff out a lot lately, and it seems kind of hit or miss. I know we're going to talk about another one of their outputs a little bit later in this podcast. Andrew really ripped on Bird Box a couple weeks ago. So I guess this seems like one of the upper tier recent Netflix things.
It seems like Netflix has actually been doing okay at giving women directors smallish projects where they have a chance to shine. I mean, like I said, I was also interested in this because this is directed by Anne Fletcher. She did Step Up in 2006. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. It's a coming of age story with someone who's not your typical, just all-American blonde girl. Just different sorts of representation. And it's kind of maybe a little bit buried. I don't know how many people are going to just watch it. But it's sweet. And I'm glad it's out there.
Cool. Well, it's available on Netflix. Unfortunately, it seems like that's just how it works, where you get 4 days to be popular on Netflix and then it disappears forever.
Everybody forgets, yeah.
But it is there, so check out Dumplin. Ash, you caught a movie this past week.
I did. I did. Yeah, I watched Sex, Lies, and Videotape this week. It's, I believe, Steven Soderbergh's first movie. Don't quote me, but I think it is. It stars Andie MacDowell and James Spader, and it is super interesting. It sort of begins, and we're presented with this situation where Andie MacDowell's character is talking to her therapist, and she's talking about how she doesn't, she thinks that people put too much emphasis on sex, and she doesn't think sex is such a big deal, and she doesn't really like to have sex with her husband. And this entire scene is kind of cross-cut with a scene where her husband is cheating on her. And so that's basically how the film begins. And James Spader is a old college friend of Annie McDowell's husband, and he comes to stay with them and kind of like totally messes up the vibe between them. But yeah, it's a super interesting movie. Like from the very start, the narrative is like massively intriguing, and the way that the film reveals information is just like perfect, I want to say. And I hate if this is Steven Soderbergh's first film, I kind of hate him for it, because like the way that we learn things about the characters in this situation, and the way that we're presented with a problem, I guess, and it just keeps getting more and more intricate as the film goes along, is like just so effective. And it kind of just, I don't want to reveal too much because the film does that so well, but basically it just kind of deals with like themes of like what is too much, what is not enough, not just sexually, but also emotionally, and kind of how those things intersect, and how trust and lies, I guess the opposite of trust in this dichotomy that the movie creates, how lies kind of sabotage intimacy. But it's a really super interesting movie. Would recommend. I picked it up at my local public library.
I don't know. You talked about the sex part and the lies part. What's the videotape part? Is that
the videotape part? Is I don't want to like give away too much, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a, I don't know. I really don't want to give away too much. Basically, James Spader arrives on the scene with a video camera, and drama ensues. I will not say anything else.
I'm curious to go, because I've never seen that one. And Soderbergh, especially lately, has just been kind of doing a bunch of different things, kind of all over the place, good and bad. It seems like I'd be curious to go back and see kind of his early stuff between this and like the Girlfriend Experience, which I know he updated for like a series on Stars, and kind of these quasi thriller type things that he made early on that is dealing a lot with sexuality and intimacy. It seems like he's ditched that to an extent recently, maybe I guess looking more at like the intimacy with technology with something like Unsane, but it seems like kind of early on in his career he was much more looking at the intimacy in at least in relationships and kind of maybe non-traditional relationships at times.
Yeah, I wish I could comment on that more, because I've really not seen some of his more recent stuff, but yeah, I mean, it kind of, the videotape part of it kind of plays into technology stuff, but like I said, I will not say anything more about that.
Yeah, no, it's one I gotta get to, and the Girlfriend Experience
for sure.
I know. It's some I forgot. It's about the I don't know. The plot I think deals with something around a high scale escort
service thing.
Yeah, because they had the TV series that I know they kind of updated. So I'd be curious to see how that plays. Cool. I think Sex Lies and Videotape is in the Criterion Collection right now, so it's probably widely available for people at the library and such. So yeah, check it out. So I've been on a early Hitchcock kick lately. There's a lot of shout out to the TCM streaming app, which has some great content on there, and it's really cool because it really, the stuff only lasts for a couple weeks, and so you have like this window to like catch these older films. So shout out to them. They've been
Sounds like Movie a little bit.
Yeah, kind of. It just kind of does a rotation throughout the weeks where it's stuff that's been playing on TCM, but they just toss it on there also, and so you can watch it. So, like, I caught a couple of these, the Magnificent Ambersons. They got a lot of cool stuff on there, so check that out. You know, in the post film struck world, it's a nice little resource to have. So one of the things I caught recently was Suspicion, which was one of the early Hitchcock films with Cary Grant and Joan Fontaine. Pretty much the gist is Cary Grant plays this charming asshole, as he does a lot, named Johnny Asgarth, and he sweeps Joan Fontaine's character Lena McLaidlaw, who is kind of this somewhat sheltered. She's kind of portrayed as this bookish character who's very wealthy, and sweeps her off her feet, and the two get married. But then when she marries him, she learns that he has no money and is pretty much just kind of using small business ploys and gambling and in thievery to make ends meet, and is not as affluent as he kind of portrayed himself early on. But she decides to stick with the marriage, and then it kind of chronicles the early on in their marriage. He's very he's not unfaithful, but very irresponsible. He's losing a lot of money, but then gaining a lot back, and buying a bunch of stuff, and then stealing from people. And she starts to kind of feel like he, especially after the death of her father, that he's kind of intending to off her at some point in order to collect her inheritance, because he's very underwhelmed when her father dies, and doesn't give them much other than like these two chairs, and he's pissed off because all they get is these two chairs. And it really does play into like this, because he's constantly you're seeing people associated with him disappear, including this dear friend of his. And Joan Fontaine won an Academy Award for the performance, and she does a solid job of she kind of overacts it a little, but it's nice because you have this kind of suave underpinning that Cary Grant's doing, and the whole psychological game playing between the two of them, I think, is really effective. You have the wonderful sequence where Cary Grant is walking through the hallway with the incredibly white glass of milk that was, that they had the light under, as he takes it up to her. And it's constantly playing with this idea that he's trying ways again and again to kill her inconspicuously in order to take her money. He has this fascination with this neighbor of theirs who's like a true crime or a crime novelist who's constantly talking about the different ways she's killing off her characters in her books, and he's like taking notes from that. And it's all very absurd and kind of insane. But the thing that killed me with it is at the end, you feel like you're going into like this insane whirlwind moment where it's he's gonna make his move and gonna try to kill her, and something's gonna happen, similar to like it kind of sets up like the ending to Vertigo or Rear Window, where you have all this very rushed ending where something's gonna happen and kind of leave the plot at where it is. And I guess this was more the studio interrupting what Hitchcock was trying to do, but it ends with her kind of, him not really admitting to it, but her kind of assuming that all of that was a misunderstanding, and that their marriage is going to be fine, and that she's so sorry for doubting him. And then they all go back home, and it's all right. And it kind of just completely pulls the rug out of all of this kind of psychosexual tension that you have built up over the course of the movie, and felt very very lackluster for Hitchcock. I was really digging this movie until that happened. It was kind of a bummer. It was like a real, because it really had all of the makings of like his masterpiece movies, and then it just completely she was just like, I'm so sorry, I was stupid. You're right. Let's go home. Let's stay married. And I was like, come on, like at least like somebody has to die.
That's the real horror story.
That's the real. Yeah, you're right. But. You know, I don't know. It was really disappointing. I watched this. I also watched Lifeboat, which was a very interesting one. That one, yeah, that one's a very interesting one, and one that it was funny. I saw a lot of the reviews on Letterboxd, and people are going, "Not your traditional Hitchcock. It doesn't have the punch." And I was like, yeah, but it has a lot of the different. Clearly, it has a lot of one. It's not like he never did the whole one location movie. I mean, he did Rear Window as well as Lifeboat, so he's done one location movies. And then two, it has a lot of this. Pretty much that whole movie is just sticking a bunch of people in one space and amping up their different personalities and quirks and insecurities. And I'm like, I feel like that's pretty much all of his movies, that it's just stuff festering under the surface. And so Lifeboat, I think, is a little bit better. And then I watched Jamaica Inn, which was deeply forgettable. A weird movie. It's a weird movie. But shout out to really the real MVP in all of this is
TCM.
The real review here is that the TCM streaming app has some great stuff. A+ content right now. Check out the TCM app. The early Hitchcock they have on it is hit or miss, but the app itself, aces. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had for this week. Nathan, you had a movie that you wanted to talk about, and we will let you pick whatever direction you want to take for that.
So Zach just alluded to the movie that I have to talk about this week is Bandersnatch.
Is it a movie?
It's like a film, the length of a film. I don't know. It's Bandersnatch, the new Black Mirror interactive whatever program released to Netflix. I've actually never seen Black Mirror before. I've sat through a number of papers about it, and I have had many an episode explained to me. And I don't know, that's
the best way to watch it, I guess.
I just always thought that a lot of the kind of like, I mean, I know it's an anthology show and it varies probably in quality episode to episode and has different directors and whatnot. But it's just like every time I hear somebody like tell me about an episode, I'm like, I don't really want to watch that. Like, it just a lot of times just sounds sort of like bullshit philosophy 101 kind of moral conflicts, and I'm just not really into that. And I'm just the kind of like panicky fear of technology sort of media is not usually my bag. And that's often, what Black Mirror is about. But I decided to watch this just because I was like,
okay, I don't understand how it works. Okay.
I don't know. I just wanted to like see what it was, what the gimmick was all about, just test it out and see if it was really truly worth the hype. And I very immediately found myself not really enjoying the experience of this. So it basically is about this young programmer. I'll get to it. I'll get to it, Lydia. No, don't worry. So it's basically this this kind of story about this programmer in the UK named Stefan in the 1980s. He's really into this choose your own adventure novel called The Bandersnatch, which was written by this author who like went crazy and killed his wife, and it's sort of clearly trying to channel this sort of like Philip K. Dick kind of thing. A very conspiracy theory sort of show. So basically this guy is developing this game on his own, and he takes it to a company. And the company's like, oh, we love this idea. Like we'll invest in it. You can come do it here. And from there, you kind of have the like first of the real sort of like narrative decisions in the game, or movie or whatever it is. Before then, you're sort of like you're the guy's waking up, and you get to choose like which cassette tape he listens to, and it like gives you a choice of two. You click one, and then he picks that song to listen to, and then that song starts playing. Or like he chooses which cereal you choose for him, which cereal he's going to eat for breakfast.
What do you mean by choose? Like it just waits until you click on something?
What a stupid
like,
decision-making process.
Yeah, literally like the kind of the screen, like there's a close-up of him holding two different cassette tapes in his hand, and he's sort of like moving them back and forth, and then these little like windows pop up that
like
say
like a looped motion sort
choose,
of thing.
yeah,
until
sort
you
of
choose
like,
something. Okay,
yeah, like choose Thompson, choose to listen to the Thompson Twins, or choose to listen to Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and then you like click it, and if you don't click it, it's like timed, and if you don't click it, it just chooses for you. So after a while, I just kind of started letting the game choose for me, because I was like not really invested enough to care enough about like what these narrative decisions were going to do. But the first real big like kind of fork in the road you come to is when you go to this company and you can choose either like, yes, I'll take the game here and make it with you guys, or you can choose to say no and refuse the offer. And so I chose, yes, like let's make the game. And after you make that choice, it cuts to like 6 months in the future, and you're watching a like TV news review of the video game, and it's a huge flop and sucks. And so then it takes you back in time to make the other choice, and it's becoming very clear to me at this point that the movie like wants you to pick certain paths. Literally, like certain paths are dead ends, and it will make you go back and like choose the other one. So I was just getting frustrated, because I was like, I want more, choice and more interactivity. And it's just like the limits of the program and of the kind of gimmick become very clear very early on. Just because you feel so frustratingly kind of limited in your options, and in your ability to steer the narrative. And as it goes on, it like becomes about mind control and free will, and like free will being an illusion. And I think this is just like sort of very indicative to me of everything that I've ever heard or read about Black Mirror, and why I'm not really crazy about it. Because I think that you could really sort of reflect on the medium and on the kind of choose your own adventure format. And even more just like on games in general, because we have, like this notion of interactivity, when we play a game, we have some sort of control, but those controls and the limits of what we can do are always dictated to us by whoever it is created that game or whatever. Our options are always limited. We're always going to run into some kind of wall. And I feel like you could make a really interesting movie kind of about the failures of interactivity, about the limits. But this just becomes again, the philosophy 101, like, is free will an illusion thing that I just don't find very interesting, because I don't even feel like the creators of the show are that interested. It felt to me more like they're like, oh, our film is going to be seen as really gimmicky if we're just doing the choose your own adventure thing. So we need to come up with some kind of like philosophical sort of exterior to cloak onto the show to make it like to justify using this gimmick to make it seem thoughtful and smart. And it's really not. It's like, it's clearly just wanting to sort of indulge in some metatextuality and some very uninspired fourth wall breaking that just didn't really do a lot for me. Honestly, I think that you were much better off just like going and watching Duck Amuck, the Chuck Jones Looney Tunes short, which is about a conflict between an on-screen character and the creator of a film, which is what Bandersnatch becomes about. Sort of, it's about sort of, like he becomes this character. Stefan becomes aware that he's being controlled in some way, and depending on which path you take, he's being controlled by different things. But in some of the paths that you take, it can become about like he realizes he's in a show, or he realizes he's in a Netflix show. And so it becomes about that sort of like tension between the subject of a film and the person who made it. But so I just think that Duck Amuck, it's like 7 minutes and does this in a way that's like way funnier and more insightful and more engaging to me. This was just like 2 hours that I was like wanting to be over, within 10 minutes. But some people really like Black Mirror, and people enjoyed this. But also, it's like last year, Steven Soderbergh put out that show Mosaic on HBO, which is a choose your own adventure show, and you can choose the narrative and stuff. And there was not a peep about it. And Black Mirror is getting all this hype, and I think part of it is obviously because it's on Netflix. But I think one of the things about this show is that Netflix, keeps tabs on how you watch things. If you pause, they make a note of that. If you stop watching after 9 minutes, they make a note of that. So this is really just a like new shiny kind of data harvesting tool to sort of like collect choices, collect data on viewers based on the choices you made. I read an article that said, this kind of technology could be used to like do, test products. You could have a character say, hey, which box do you prefer? Which design do you prefer? And you pick it, and that has some effect on the story, but can also be used to gather data about products or whatever. So it's like Black Mirror is this whole anti-tech kind of panicky thing about technology, about dystopian surveillance often, but it's literally kind of enabling that sort of dystopian corporate surveillance that it's also warning us about. So I just feel like the sort of any point it's trying to make as a show is undercut by its relationship with Netflix. And also, may I mention that Netflix is the one who approached Black Mirror about making an interactive movie. It wasn't the other way around. Netflix was wanting to make something with interactive technology and was like, Black Mirror is the perfect vehicle for that. So they took it to Black Mirror, who then, came up with the film.
Well, you can, I guess, take your own adventure on Netflix if you would choose so. It is available there. Black Mirror Bandersnatch. We're going to take a short break. There's no choice in this. We're going to take a short break regardless of what you feel like doing, and we'll be back with Wheels on Meals after this.
Hi there, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr, with an important message during this break in the show. Cinematary would like you to know that we surprisingly do not want your money, and we don't want to place ads in the show at this time. That's not why we do this. We do it because we enjoy each other's company, and we want to bring you our pure, unadulterated opinions on the world of cinema. However, there are a few things you can do to help out the show that we would greatly appreciate. Firstly, leave us a review on iTunes, preferably a positive one, because apparently this will help increase our podcast exposure. Secondly, send us a tweet at Cinematary, or better yet, send us an email at cinematary@yahoo.com so we can hear from you guys for a change. Maybe you can tell us where the money from Fargo is stashed, or maybe you don't think In the Mood for Love is the sexiest movie you've ever seen. Regardless, let us know your thoughts and we will read them out and respond to them on future episodes. Finally, please share the show with friends and members of your family who you think really enjoy listening to us and participating in our film discussions. We also have some cool merchandise that you can check out on the site. So to recap, review, send us your thoughts through Twitter and email, and share with your friends and family. We would truly appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 229 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be starting our Jackie Chan series with 1984's Wheels on Meals. It was directed by Sammo Hung, from a script by Hung, Edward Tang, and Johnny Lee. The film stars Jackie Chan, Hung, Bao Yun, and Lola Forner. The owners of a mobile restaurant help a private eye locate a mysterious woman. That is what the plot of this movie. There was a couple other ones, but this one sounded like the most entertaining.
Yeah.
The film was a box office success in East Asia and Japan. It was released as under the title of Spartan X. Wheels on Meals spawned the Spartan X franchise. In '84, it was adapted into a hit Japanese beat-em-up video game, also called Spartan X and released as Kung Fu Master internationally. The film and game grossed a combined total of approximately $139 million worldwide. There was also a sequel to the video game, Spartan X 2, and a Spartan X comic book series. The film's title was supposed to be Meals on Wheels, but Superstitious Golden Harvest, who is the distributors, their executives, demanded the title change because their two previous films with the titles that began with the letter M, Megaforce and Menage a Trois, I'm not making that one up, were both box office flops. The three action star brothers, Yoon, Chan, and Hung, are longtime best friends and had gone to the Peking Opera School in their youth. The release of Wheels on Meals came in the midst of their most prolific period working together as a trio. The three men had acted together on Jackie Chan's Project A and the first of Hung's original Lucky Stars trilogy, Winners and Sinners, in 1983. Wheels on Meals was in 84. A year later, they were reunited twice more for the Lucky Stars semi-sequels, My Lucky Stars and Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars. Great titles.
Cute.
Wheels on Meals was the first of two films which paired star Jackie Chan against former professional kickboxing champion Benny Urquidez.
I don't know. Benny the Jet
Urquidez. The other being the 1988 film Dragons Forever. Their fight in Wheels on Meals, though, is typically regarded as one of the greatest on-screen martial art fights ever performed. At one part in the battle between the pair, a spin-off kick performed by Urquidez is so quick that the resulting airflow extinguishes a row of candles. This is shown on screen with no cuts or trick photography. By the time Wheels on Meals was made in 1984, shooting in Hong Kong had become practically impossible. Firstly, the action stars had become so famous that they could not walk through the streets with impunity. And second, due to the mounting difficulties in obtaining a permit from the government in order to film in Hong Kong, it made that a difficulty. Bruce Lee had paved the way for Hong Kong filmmakers shooting abroad with the 1972 film Way of the Dragon, whose location filming was done in Italy, whereas the interiors had been shot at Golden Harvest Studio. When Hung took his cast and crew to Barcelona, he wanted to strongly establish the locations in Barcelona as real and to avoid shooting interiors at Golden Harvest. In comparison to Hong Kong, the Spanish authorities were very cooperative in allowing the use of locations for filming, even for car chases and fight sequences. During a fight sequence, after Keith Vitali accidentally kicked Jackie Chan in the throat, he broke character to see if Jackie was okay, angering the film's crew because he hadn't waited for Sammo Hung to yell cut before breaking character. When a similar accident took place between Vitali and Sammo, this time Vitali waited for Sammo to yell cut before seeing if he was alright, which Vitali says felt like an eternity. I couldn't find really any contemporary reviews of this. I searched all over. I did find a 2002 review of it in the AV Club saying that although Hung is considered one of Hong Kong's greats, this is obviously an early effort. There are too many silly fat butt boob jokes and too many Peckinpah-esque cuts during Chan Bao action scenes that should have been left alone. But Wheels on Meals is still pretty good, mostly because its heart is in the right place. Bao is a decent sidekick and Chan gets to fight Benny the Jet Urquidez in a match that, while it's fairly conventional bit of Asian, and this is their words not mine, ass kickage, will make your eyes glaze over in disbelief. On that note, let's talk a little bit about Wheels on Meals, and I guess the first thing to kind of talk about is kind of introing into this series on Jackie Chan is, I guess, where everybody kind of sits with kind of Chan as an action star. I don't know how many movies of his everybody has seen prior to this, but how does Wheels on Meals stack up? Lydia, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so my familiarity with Jackie Chan, I mean, I've seen most of his, like action comedy American films, the Rush Hour, Shanghai films with Owen Wilson. And I was also a little bit familiar with some of his Hong Kong stuff, but not his comedies. like kind of more serious roles. So I was really excited to actually see Jackie Chan in his heyday and what got him famous.
The one question also is, how did everybody watch this? Because I started to watch it on Amazon Prime, and it has the English dub, and it's awful. So I found a subtitled version online. Did anybody like sit through the English dub?
I did. It was rough.
I did as well. It was absolutely terrible.
Because I know what Jackie Chan sounds like, and I hated that they dubbed his voice with somebody else.
Some people are also like randomly Australian or British, and some people are like really like cartoonishly Italian, and I just don't I don't understand the way that they went about that. Like, it doesn't seem like any of those accents actually mean anything.
Yeah, I had watched it before in not in English, in the original audio, and rewatching it, I tried to watch it on Amazon, and I was able to get through like 10 minutes, and the dub is just really bad. And it just sounds like, it sounds really wrong. Like, it's very clearly not anyone's actual voice.
Yeah, I made it through like 5 minutes, and then the dub of Jackie Chan came in, and I was like, no, because like Lydia, I know what he sounds like. It was bad. Ashley, what did you make of this movie as a whole? Have you seen any of Jackie Chan stuff, I guess, American or Hong Kong prior to this?
Yeah, so I've actually never seen a Jackie Chan movie until this one. So I guess the terrible dub wasn't like as painful to me, having not really ever being familiar with Jackie Chan's voice. So I was super excited to see a Jackie Chan movie, clearly, because he's like, I've always known he was a legend, and, I've seen like clips of his movies all over the place, but I'd never, I'd seen part of his movies on TV and stuff like that, but never actually seen one all the way through. Besides the dub, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. There was, what was that term? Quite a bit of ass kickage. And seriously, the fight scenes were just like absolutely sick. Some also really sick skateboarding. I feel like I would be completely amiss if I left that out. Skateboarding scene was dope. The fighting was just like absolutely unreal. I want to learn to do a backflip so bad after having watched this movie, and I don't know, I found like the whole character development in the relationship of the main two characters with the beautiful pickpocket very interesting from start to finish. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall, and I would really love to see a subtitled version at some point.
I'm curious, off mic, you called Jackie Chan like a mix between Bruce Lee and Charlie Chaplin, and I feel like that's an apt comparison. And Buster Keaton as well as somebody that he looks up to. So I was curious, kind of going into this, did you have like any idea of what a Jackie Chan movie would kind of be like, or were you just completely going in blind?
Well, I knew that Jackie Chan was like a martial arts master, and I knew that Jackie Chan, kind of his legend, I guess, he like really worked in his movies to kind of work against like Chinese stereotypes and Asian American stereotypes, and so I guess that's the Bruce Lee factor. And then having watched the movie, I totally saw like the physical comedy part of it. And it felt very Buster Keaton, very Charlie Chaplin-esque, like from the very start when the cousin character like jumps out the window and the awning is moved out of the way. Yeah, the awning's moved out of the way and he just falls straight on his butt. Like, I didn't count, and now I wish I had counted how many times somebody falls just like straight on their butt in this movie. So yeah, it seems like a perfect mix of physical comedy and like really just kick-ass martial arts.
And good pratfalls.
Nathan, where do you put Wheels on Meals in your Jackie Chan?
I think it's one of his best. I mean, really like pure comedy. You know, a lot of his other movies are not like Police Story and those movies are comedies, but they feel like, you know, the comedy is kind of contained within the action, and this feels sort of the other way around. Like it's truly just a straight up comedy, but with action inside of it. And I think it's really great, particularly because of the collaboration with Sammo Hung, who really I think deserves kind of like particular attention as one of really the single most important and influential figures in Hong Kong cinema. I mean, this is a guy who's been working since the 60s and 70s and has been or worked on like over 200 movies, you know, as a stuntman and a stunt coordinator and director of action and choreographer of action. I mean, a number of movies we've talked about on the podcast before he's worked on, like A Touch of Zen by King Hu, also The Fate of Lee Khan by King Hu. You know, he, let's see, also was the action choreographer for Ashes of Time by Wong Kar-wai, which we did an episode on. You know, he worked on Bruce Lee's movies, directed his own movies like Enter the Fat Dragon, you know, movies that are really sort of emphasizing his physical stature and mining comedy from that. But he's also sort of a kind of like cross-genre figure, you know, obviously getting his start in this sort of wuxia historical martial arts movies in the 60s and 70s. But in the 1980s, he sort of spearheaded this new genre called Jiangxi. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not totally sure. But Jiangxi are basically like kind of Chinese vampires / zombies. Like they're these reanimated corpses that jump up and down. So he directed movies like Encounters of the Spooky Kind and Mr. Vampire, which are these sort of like crosses, you know, between horror movies and kind of martial arts comedies. So he's sort of, you know, done it all, and has even, you know, worked on films in the United States and worked on television in the United States. And you know, he's kind of like, I feel like the Frank Tashlin sort of to Jackie Chan's Jerry Lewis, you know, sort of like a creative mentor and kind of creative big brother. And obviously, like both Jerry Lewis and Jackie Chan have their own distinct voices separate from those guys. But I think that like the collaborations with Sammo Hung are really some of the best in Jackie Chan's filmography, because Sammo is really like, you know, just an incredible director of action, and really good at doing, you know, crazy things with people's bodies. I mean, just the fact that he's like a martial arts star and he's a large guy, you know, that's kind of rare. So I think that's sort of telling about his talents.
I'm glad you brought up the Jerry Lewis comparison, because I know we talked about him last year for this series, and I kind of got some vibes of the Jerry Lewis movies that we watched in this, because just the absurd zaniness of just the plot and the characters, it just all felt so cartoonish, and it kind of felt like it was you know, just pulled right out of Artisan Models or The Nutty Professor or the Bellboy.
I wouldn't say Jackie Chan does the whole like pathos sentimental thing like Jerry Lewis and even Charlie Chaplin to an extent, like both really lean into. I mean, Jackie Chan does amazing things with his body, and like you can tell he takes some hard hits, but it's never like sentimental, I guess. Like the punishment that he puts himself through, it's like, oh, I'm doing a job, and not necessarily like, isn't it kind of sad what I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of like Chaplin and Lewis both. Like this movie is just sort of grounded in like what its characters do for a living. Like, I don't even really know how you can explain the plot of this other than like they work at a food truck and some crazy stuff happens. And I feel like it's sort of the same thing with like Chaplin movies and Jerry Lewis movies, where it's like, oh, he's a tramp, he's homeless, whatever. He's just doing these.
He works in a hotel.
He's doing these odd jobs, and stuff happens. And the same thing with Jerry Lewis. It's like, oh, he's a bellboy, or he is an orderly or whatever, and it's just crazy stuff happens because of the mishaps of the job or whatever.
Well, the plot doesn't even like really kick in until like the last probably 30-ish minutes.
It's a really long time for Chan and Sammo Hung to like hook up.
Yeah, because Sammo Hung is like away from them for probably the first hour of the movie, and then they finally meet up and they're like, oh yeah, we're best buds. And you're like, well, we've been getting instances of Sammo Hung for this whole movie, but we didn't really understand his connection, other than there's probably 3 Chinese guys in all of Barcelona.
Yeah, the fact that this is set in Spain is like a complete mystery to me.
But I think kind of going back to the comparison I was making, it's still it is kind of, I guess, in that realm where you do have this very 1 sentence long plot line where it's difficult to really go into the nuances of what's going on in this movie because there's so many different things happening. And especially at the beginning, there are these 2 guys who work at a food truck, but they have this intense workout at the very beginning that like borders on like some Rocky montage.
Like it was comedy workout,
but like there's like parts where they're like sweating, and it's like are we supposed to get turned on by this? Like, I don't know, there's a lot happening here. They're really sweaty, and I was like, all right. I mean, Jackie Chan looked really good back in the day. and then they're doing a food truck, and then they're fighting bikers, and like it's not even a normal food truck because like nobody's coming up to order. Jackie Chan's on a skateboard getting orders and taking them to people, and it's just there's so many different just wacky things happening constantly. And then they're going to the mental institution. And that's a whole thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The guy who was the clock, though, was kind of just kind of entertaining me. Like when he was coming in as the alarm, like I kind of that part kind of got me. Like there's so many different things that are happening in this movie that don't make any sense. And the last 30 minutes is, oh, we have to save this person because she has this, and crazy inheritance. And none of that ever led up to anything at the beginning of the movie. And it's kind of fun for that that reason. It's just kind of this nonsense with all of this stuff happening that is entertaining. And I feel like you get that to an extent with the examples that we've made with Chaplin or Jerry Lewis. It's just kind of nonsense for a long time, and then finally what the movie is supposed to be about actually happens. I guess let's kind of talk a little bit about the specifically these fight sequences. The one at the end I know is between Jackie and the Jet is one of the more famous ones. Lydia, because you were Snapchatting me before we did this episode, I'm curious. You listened to an episode with the Jet beforehand. And he was talking about working with Jackie. What did he have to say about doing this fight scene in the movie? And I guess he did the 2 movies with Jackie Chan.
Mm-hmm. It seems like he and Jackie had a really lovely collaboration. Jackie didn't speak a lot of English at the time, and Benny is he's a professional fighter, kickboxer, and so he was bringing his ideas for choreography, and then Jackie would show him what they wanted to do. And they kind of work together. I know there's some talk around that fight scene. They were throwing real punches, not to the face, but the body shots, like those were, I don't know if Benny knew how to pull his punches. And they were actually beating each other up. Which I guess is one reason the fight comes across so intensely on screen. But he had nothing but good recollections about working with Jackie.
It's such a prolonged fight, like because I caught myself a ways into it going, this
brutal.
is a really long, and there's not really any music, and they kind of ditch all of the rest of the stuff, and it's just this fight, and you're kind of like, this is going on for a long time, and Jackie's getting thrown places, and Benny's getting thrown places, and they're taking hard hits to the face and the stomach, and it is brutal.
I think what's interesting is looking at them together, because Benny, as a professional and white guy, he's very square and solid, and Jackie just looks like a dancer is what I noticed. He's very light on his feet, and he's got a workout leggings, whatever on. She's so fast and skinny in comparison, so them together looks mismatched.
Yeah, I think it's interesting about Jackie Chan, because he does sort of have this kind of, especially I think in the United States, a kind of reputation as almost a sort of kid star a little bit. He's done a number of American movies kind of directed at children, and I think has this sort of family-friendly, sort of wholesome air to him. But he really does not play, and when a Jackie Chan movie gets down and dirty, it really does. And I think that's the kind of the interesting thing, in comparison to somebody like Bruce Lee, who is just a bolt of pure intensity. Jackie is that too, but like you're saying, Lydia, he's so graceful and so small and just kind of able to fit himself in to places. And I kind of what I think I really ultimately like about him most is, thinking take it back to silent comedy again, Chaplin, I think that where a lot of the comedy comes from is from sort of using objects kind of against their intended or inscribed purpose. When he puts the bread rolls and stabs the bread rolls with the forks and make them dance, he's using forks for a reason that you're not supposed to use forks. And that's kind of where the comedy comes from. And I feel with Jackie, a lot of the times it comes from doing that, but with his own body and sort of using his body sort of against itself and for a sort of a purpose that's not kind of the intended purpose of your body, using it pushing it in ways that it's not supposed to be pushed. And he just and it's just total dedication with him, completely sort of giving himself. Yeah.
And to your point, that final fight sequence or whatever that's it's not a comedy sequence at all.
Yeah.
It's
for sure.
Kind of painful to watch. Because you can tell that he's totally he and Benny both are totally dedicated to it.
That's what I always love about a good Jackie Chan blooper reel, because everybody
Yes.
else's blooper reels are just here's some funny gags.
I forgot the words.
We can't talk. And Jackie Chan's blooper reels are just him being rushed to the hospital 5 times. I just love that so much.
Ashley, do you have any impressions from the fight sequence? I'll say one real quickly, that Benny kind of looked like some actual frat boy who could fight, because I feel most frat boys probably think they can fight and can't.
He did.
But this guy, he looked straight out of a frat, but who could actually fight, and it kind of made the fight much more fun.
He was also wearing eyeliner, right? Am I making that up?
Was he?
Was he wearing eyeliner?
Maybe. I was more focused on the use of the suspenders in his fight.
And the bow tie.
Yeah, he was.
His eyes were very distinctive to me for some reason.
Actually, he might have been wearing makeup, because in the interview he talked about, that I watched on YouTube, he talks about how he has deep set eyes, and he's if you put some makeup in there, it makes them look pretty menacing. And
Yeah.
I was so he might have been actually.
His eyes were very distinctive, and I feel like he was wearing eyeliner, but he very much did look like a frat boy. I agree with everything that was just said about it. The funny thing about that whole scene is there's the other 2 characters are also in their own fights at the same time, right? And so the is it Bao Yin? Is that his name? The David character? he's fighting that guy over. Do you guys remember the part where he's fighting the other guy like on the couches, and he's just like hopping from couch to couch to couch?
Is that the
that
Keith,
was like
what's his name?
Yes.
Guy, the other.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the guy's name was. That was like one of the most impressive moments to me, honestly, was when he was like going fucking nuts on the couches.
It was a really impressive use of space because it's just kind of like the square room, and they've got like the 4 puffy chairs, and they kind of go over them and flip them, and they use every surface.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when they both get done, sword fighting.
Yeah. That whole sequence, that's what I was gonna say is Sammo Hung. I mean, Jackie Chan and his and Benny's fight is incredible, but Sammo Hung does some incredible his little backflips and the way he moves his body in the fencing fight, especially when he's like trying to get away from the. I don't know what the proper is. I think it's a sword. I forgot what the proper name for the fencing sword is. But when he's trying to evade that and he doesn't have a sword himself, you forget that he's kind of this larger guy because he's like sliding around and maneuvering around and evading it. It's incredibly impressive, and that sequence kind of comes after the big fight, but is just as impressive also, and kind of I guess harkens back to he kind of came up with these other two guys.
In the interview I watched, Benny talk about how impressed he was with Sammo Hung, because he's a bigger guy, and you have to actually be incredibly physically strong to be able to move your body like that and be so graceful. So he was also, I don't know, it was really sweet how impressed he was with the craft of these Hong Kong filmmakers.
I'm curious, Nathan, I saw some people kind of make reference a little bit to Sammo Hung's wuxia background and how you can kind of tell a little bit in the filmmaking. You can kind of feel some of that just in the way he pans the camera or uses the camera. Like, it's very subtle when you're watching this kind of action comedy, but you can feel some of the stuff that he would use or that he would influence people in the wuxia genre.
Yeah, I think there's just sort of such a kind of dedication to faithfully depicting kind of this sort of display of combat, that even though this is, in such a different genre and is such a kind of different movie, I feel like you sort of see a kinship there with the wuxia movies, just because, I mean, these guys, like, even just the fact that these guys sort of like discipline themselves and keep themselves sort of like fit according to some kind of code, even though they work at a food truck, they're doing their workout regimen and sort of keeping their bodies in shape and really dedicating themselves to that sort of craft of the body. I think that has sort of a kinship with wuxia, which is such a, about honor and all these sort of codes, these kind of like knightly sort of ideals. They clearly kind of like hold themselves to that sort of ideal in this movie. Even though it's a comedy set in Barcelona, I think you see a sort of like thematic kind of kinship with wuxia, and also in the filmmaking, like you're saying, that is just such a sort of record of action and of movement and really getting it all and kind of getting all the information in the frame, and not just chopping the action to bits. I think that kind of comes out of that tradition. It's not that removed from it. It's sort of like an evolution of older genre forms, I feel like, a little bit. Kind of in the same way, I mean, again, like, very different movies, but John Woo's movies are sort of their own kind of updating of the wuxia tradition, with a sort of absurd emphasis on honor and loyalty and fealty and all those good ideals. This is kind of its own sort of chivalrous, I guess, wuxia kind of code. So,
Yeah. And the other thing I was just thinking about, and we can kind of maybe cover this over the course of the series, but I think there you have to also kind of look at this in the context of Jackie Chan to Bruce Lee and kind of Bruce Lee's movies and how they were, bringing both kind of, Hong Kong filmmaking as well as, just that martial arts genre film to a more international audience. And then you have Jackie Chan's films, which I feel like both Lee and Chan kind of have this singular vision and almost kind of auteurship to them, but at the same time still have this kinship as these harbingers for this type of filmmaking.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, I think he's kind of continuing the kind of sort of proud sort of project of Bruce Lee, because I feel like Bruce Lee's thing, was always kind of about being, proud to be Chinese, and, sort of pushing back a little bit against the United States and sort of American imperialism and whatnot. And I feel like the fact that you have these like proud Chinese guys living in Spain, I think sort of speaks to a sort of connection between what Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan were maybe trying to communicate about their own identities in their movies. They're very proud of who they are and not afraid to show it. I think both of them were.
Bruce Lee didn't come out of the same like Peking opera school, did he?
I'm not.
I don't know anything about him because I just
sure. Let me look.
So I just also think about part of Jackie Chan's identity is like this really hard work ethic.
Yeah, I think they're sort of the same thing. Like, there's sort of a myth about both of them at the very least about their sort of dedication. Just because, Bruce Lee has the like insane, crazy, intense workout that he was really famous for that like Keanu Reeves then did like in preparing for The Matrix or something like that. So there is, I think, this sort of like, sort of they both have this image of like extreme dedication, like really giving it all. And I think they sort of both have a kind of similar philosophy about that, even if their styles are so different. And I think at sort of the very beginning of his career, just because it was kind of like contemporaneous to Bruce Lee, or maybe a little bit after Bruce Lee's death, I think they tried to initially sort of push Jackie Chan in that kind of direction to be, a more serious Bruce Lee star, which he can obviously do, very serious, kind of more dramatic work, but he broke out and found the sort of comedy angle, and really sort of created his own persona. There's nobody else. I mean, there's so much clear influence from Buster Keaton and Chaplin, but like nobody else is like Jackie Chan. I think just he's like totally his own, because I feel like there is a sort of almost a kind of like jackass thing about him, where a lot of the movies are sort of this record of pain and injury, and like part of what you're reacting to is like him getting hurt, and not just like him succeeding at
I think it's totally different though, because he's not like fucking around and hurting his body. Like there's intentionality, and like you see the outtakes, and it's like, no, he did 100 takes of this to get it perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that there is still a sort of like fascination kind of with what goes wrong, and like stunts going wrong. Like showing those is as important as showing like when it goes right.
Yeah, there's definitely something about just the showy quality of it, regardless, like going back to our discussion that we had about the fight between him and Benny, you start to see the bruises take shape on their faces and their bodies throughout the fight, and there is something to seeing that pain accrue throughout the fight that you feel invested. I think we've talked about on the podcast before, when you watch a lot of more modern action movies, you lose that because it doesn't feel, it's so quickly cut together. It doesn't feel like you're actually watching two people fight. You're just watching two people kind of adjacent to each other moving, and it's quickly edited together. And there is something when you're watching like Jackie Chan do anything in this movie, or even with stuff that Keaton does, where you're watching just this total completely unfiltered physicality, and you kind of lose sense of the plot direction, and you're just kind of just taking in the sheer incredible qualities of these on-screen presences. And I think that is true, and that kind of, it's almost like, forget what's happening in the plot, let's just take in this whole scene right here. Any final thoughts on Wheels on Meals before we wrap up this episode?
No, I just love Jackie.
Same. What a guy.
I'm excited for the rest of the series. I've been rewatching some of the American ones and like trying to find more of his Hong Kong ones. And we're not doing everything, obviously, but for next week, I'd also recommend Project A, because we're doing one he directed, and like that's also a Jackie Chan directorial effort. It's awesome. I'm excited.
No, I'm very excited for the rest of this series. I've seen, like, I'm kind of like you, Lydia. I've seen a number of Jackie Chan's American movies, but I have not seen much in the Hong Kong realm. So I'm curious to dig into there. And I know next week, Police Story, I feel like, is the one of the staple ones that people always allude to. So
it is extremely good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can that's just it. That's all, folks. That'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter at Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Like we just said, Police Story is next week. Head to the site right now. We have the rest of the Jackie Chan series movies up there, as well as our we're going through the best of 2018. We had our podcast last week. We updated with the top 25 movies, past our top 10 that we talked about in the episode on the website. And then we're also, throughout the month of January, going to be putting our best of list together. We just had our best comedies. We're going to have best blockbusters next week. So please check that out. You can find all of that on cinematary.com. But yeah, until next week, thank you guys for listening.